Today, South Africa will get an update on how the unemployment trends are looking like. Stats SA will release the first quarter labour force numbers. Women and young people have been the most affected groups by unemployment for years on end. Is it time to let young people and women find their own solutions to the problem? Well, let's probe this now with Siyabulela Mama from the Assembly of the Unemployed. We also have Lethiwe Nkosi from the Youth Capital Network. A very good morning to you both. Perhaps let me start with you, Lethiwe. A lot has been said about how we have to stop talking about youth unemployment and start doing something about it. We know, just looking at previous unemployment statistics that have over and over again shown how dire the situation for South African youth is, especially looking at the ages of 15 to 34. What are some of the probable causes in your view?
As Youth Capital, what we have realized is that there are many roadblocks or challenges that young people face in trying to become economically productive, from when they are at a place of learning to when they transition into the labor market. And so, when we think about young women, for example, being able to get their matric certificate and finding employment after that, there are challenges that they encounter in getting their qualification. And then there's also a challenge around the cost of looking for work. We've done surveys, we've done research that shows us that it costs over 1,000 rand for a young person to look for work. And when you consider the fact that many young people, many young women come from households where there's no disposable income, it means that the burden to look for work is even that greater. And then also there's the challenge of experience, where employers are saying to young people that they need to have minimum experience in order for them to qualify to be eligible for a job. And so these challenges are contributors to why young people and young women are not able to enter the labor market and be economically productive.
Siyabulela, what are your views? What do you believe to be some of the biggest contributing factors to the high unemployment rate?
Look, as we've always been saying in the Assembly of the Unemployed, is that one, austerity is the most leading factor into this. The crisis of deindustrialization is actually one of them. But now we're suffering from a situation of debt crisis, which is costing South Africa lots and lots of debts in international currency. And the debt service cost for this is the one that's also leading to these budget cuts that we've been talking about. But at the same time, there's the inflation targeting now this repo rate by the South African Reserve Bank, which is quite ridiculous. These are the other leading factors that have been causing to this. Youth Capital has also released a study, a survey, that at least unemployed youth is spending looking for work over about, I think, 1.5. And this is the reason why we have been saying that as the Assembly of the Unemployed, we're calling for a basic income grant of 1,500 to help youth look for work. Because at the same time, youth is looking for work, but there is no work, and they is even spending money to look for work. So these are the issues that we have been talking about. I mean, yeah. So some really important points there. Lethiwe, looking at the cost of looking for work being so exorbitant, how much in really adding to this problem, how much do you think an overall increase in the youth population and perhaps young people in general who are leaving school perhaps too early, perhaps is exacerbating the problem?
So what we saw in 2020, especially during hard lockdown, where we found many households, heads of households passing and being affected by the pandemic, young people were forced to drop out of school and look for some form of employment in order to bring income into the household. So that definitely does exacerbate, young people being pushed out of the schooling system because they need to fend for their family. They need to find a source of income. That definitely does contribute to, young people not being able to then find permanent employment because they don't have the qualification they need, to kind of get the jobs that will allow them to be employed for a long period. And that's something to add is that, just opposed to the cost of looking for work is also the fact that the economy is not growing. Yeah. So yes, it is costly to look for, but there's not a lot of jobs in the first place that young people can apply for because the economy is not growing at the rate that it needs to grow to absorb the young people and the growing population of young people looking for work.
Mm-hmm. In fact, as you make mention of that, perhaps, Siyabulela, let me pose this to you. Some economists have even said that the problem in South Africa has a lot to do with the structural unemployment, which results in significant job mismatches because most youth do so-called soft qualifications, and that our school education system perhaps doesn't produce people with the training which is readily relevant to the economic needs of the country.
I think that's blatantly false. Because one, you have highly skilled workers. While you have highly skilled workers, you find every day workers being retrenched due to this crisis of the financialization crisis that we do have. And these are highly skilled workers who are being retrenched to go to join the masses of the unemployed. And I think the problem here, and you also find, by the way, you also find the crisis of graduates who are qualified, but there's no work for them because of, again, the problem of this financialized economy that we have that is jobless. It's export-led. It's extractive. And that's the situation that we have to understand this as. And that's why when we talk about solutions to this crisis of unemployment, we talk about the need for this re-industrialized system that is also low carbon because we also suffer from this crisis of climate change. So that's also an issue that we have to look at. The crisis of financialization. I mean, even now, if you also look at the crisis that we have, by the way, the inflation targeting by the South African Reserve Bank, the crisis for it is that we must stop the spending. It's inflation targeting so that people have spent 60% of their income on servicing their debts. So this is a crisis of, yes, the structure of the economy, but then the actual issue of mismatch is not actually the case.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts, Lethiwe? What do you make of the notion around mismatch of perhaps looking at the qualification and the youth mostly doing so-called soft qualifications?
We did, as Youth Capital, we spoke to a group of small business owners, and we also just did qualitative research around the issue of mismatch to understand what is the market demanding and what skills actually exist. And what we found is that there's a disconnect between institutions of learning and the market, whereby young people are not necessarily given the skills or even encouraged to pursue paths where they can acquire the skills needed in the market. For example, we learned from talking to small business owners that they need young people with artisanal skills, right? We learned that there are opportunities for young people to become plumbers, for example. There's a demand for plumbers in the market. However, we find that young people are not encouraged to pursue the path of becoming plumbers, to go to a TVET college. There's a strong emphasis on tertiary, going to universities. That's the tertiary route that is presented often to young people, and yet there's a demand in the market for plumbers, for example. And so, what we then concluded, one of the points that we concluded from our engagement with small business, one of it that there needs to be a better connection between institutions of learning and employers, but also we need to support young people to get the qualifications that they need to get in order to enter the labor market. We've been talking to young people at the colleges, and we've learned that there are many challenges that they encounter in them trying to complete their studies. And so, we need to not only ensure there's a connect between institutions of learning and the marketplace, but we also need to make sure that young people are supported whilst they're at the colleges trying to acquire the skills needed in the market.
And in closing, perhaps, Siyabulela, in summing up Lethiwe's outcome, do you think that perhaps one solution would resolve around a complete overhaul of our school systems, or perhaps until our universities consciously make their degree outcomes more correlated to the economic needs of South Africa?
So I think the skills debate really is a really a redundant one, because I think we have, again, I go back to the point that you have highly skilled workers who are being retrenched every day. We've seen this with the 3 million people who were retrenched during COVID times. We are seeing these happening today. So skills and education is not really the problem, because you already have a highly skilled mass of people who are unemployed. But what we need to talk about is the structure of the economy and how it is set up. We need to move away. We need to talk about how financialized our system and economy is, and how do we pay for that. And what we're saying is we need to talk about a system of reindustrialization. Taxing the rich to fund this reindustrialization process is one of them. And stopping profit shifting is actually one actual issue that would also find with this.
Siyabulela, I'm going to ask you to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your time. Thanking you both. Siyabulela Mama, Assembly of the Unemployed, as well as Lethiwe Nkosi, who from the Youth Capital Network Mobilizer. Thank you for your time.